goes by, this is a public service on YouTube.
This is a public service.
This is a public service.
Triple homicide that we had back on February 16th of 2025. I think early on, if you think back to the initial press conference that we held here, I talked about the importance that we would make sure every individual would be held accountable and that we would be transparent. And for 7 years, I continue to tell this community that when I know, they will know. And that's the driving factor why we're here today. We have concluded this internal affairs investigation, and I want to preface it with, keep in mind, we had a two-pronged mission here when we start looking at the nature of this case. The first part was the investigative procedures prior to the incident, because we had recognized there were some shortcomings there. What happened on the first domestic call, the second call, et cetera. And then it rolled into our second consideration, which was our operational response. Did the patrol personnel do the things within policies, within procedures to make sure they could safeguard and save these victims' lives? And so a combination of investigative procedures was used, accounting for almost 2,000 plus, over 2,000 plus investigative hours to get this right. This is one of those cases where we couldn't expedite it and speed it up and compromise either the officer's rights or compromise the fact that this is still an active criminal investigation, or compromise the fact that we needed to be fair and just so that the family members in this community can get all the facts. The collection of evidence consisted of over 47 employees' sworn statements, emails, body-worn camera video footage, BSO homicide grand jury videos, dispatch audio timelines, Tamarack public works videos, and other videos along with GPS tracking on radios, vehicles, and so much more, to include collecting video evidence from every single surrounding neighborhood that had access cameras or homes. I speak to that because it's within that nature of thoroughness that it's provided us an opportunity to look at the employees who had some level of failure and should be held accountable. And today, collectively, as I conclude this, 21 employees, a total of 21 employees will be disciplined related to the nature of this case, from the investigative side to the operational component. Of that 21 employees, our Professional Standards Committee, an independent group that's comprised of both civilians and law enforcement officers who assess and look at every single internal affairs case, provides a recommendation. Their initial recommendations was for that 8 of those members be terminated. Our executive team went through the protocols, looked through the final comments and things that were made in pre-disciplinary hearings, and was able to reduce that down. So the total terminations that were going to effect is 6 today. 2 were already established, which included Captain Cooper, who was terminated earlier, and one of our trainee deputies. So the totality of terminations is 8. I'm going through this academically because I know you're going to want this, but we're also going to provide this to you in print material copies. So take your notes, but understand you can take the time to listen to this one. We're going to give it to you. So that's 6 terminations. 4 members will be suspended for 10 days. 1 member will be suspended for 15 days. Another member will be suspended for 5 days. 2 employees will be suspended for 3 days. 3 employees will be suspended for at least 1 day. And 2 were non-sustained, meaning that there was no issues in terms of policy violations or anything that they'd done. One of the things that we put together here and our team has designed through all the different mechanisms that we use in the investigation was to produce an animated video illustration that would walk this community through every single aspect of how this case came out, from its call, the officer's positioning, their response, their communications, and the 911 calls that we received. And we're going to start with that video before we go into questions. To say that, why is this considered an active shooter event? Again, starting out, the call comes in, shots fired, multitude of calls comes out. That's the ambush component, which you'll see, where this individual arrived on scene, stalked his family members, set them up in an ambush position, and killed David Ponzer in his backyard. He continued to move throughout the community as Mary ran out of the home with her child in hopes to avoid being killed and hoping to survive. At that point in time, she's navigating and trying to run out the house. The suspect ended up tasing her alongside of the residents, pulled her back into the home, and as that's occurring, we're getting 911 calls, we're getting shots fired calls, and we're getting dispatched out. That call for service came out exactly at 6 o'clock in the morning. Context, it's Sunday in Tamarack. There's nothing going on in the community. It's quiet. There was only one call for service of which these men and women were active on, and that was a mental health call that occurred before the shift went into operations. So they were not, our deputies, they were not inside of a building. They were not in a traditional roll call environment. The sergeant had elected to take that call out in that scene. And so when the shots fired called, everyone was in their vehicles, in essence. Everyone was operational. And you'll see when we get this video plugged up, the nature of how the sergeant responded, the positions in which the deputies put themselves in, and the minutes, tens of minutes, not 1 or 2 minute, but the ultimate timeline between the absence of officers moving to contact to address this threat, to eliminating this threat, and then beginning to treat anyone who was injured was in excess of over 20 minutes. In excess of over 20 minutes. And we've seen time and time again in this community over the last 7 years, we've had active killer or active shooter environments. Only months before this one, in Pompano, we had an individual go into the Broward Transit area and shoot and kill someone there, and we got there within 2 minutes and eliminated that threat. I'm preemptively striking somewhat maybe the reporters who have this idea or question as to whether or not this is an organizational, because I heard this come out, is this is an organizational failure. Absolutely not. We have trained these men and women, given them the necessary tools to be successful, and we've had officers out here who've demonstrated that they understood policy, they understood procedures, and they executed their mission saving lives. So that's off the plate. This is not an administrative organizational failure issue, nor is it anything that is systemic and that now we have to restructure, change policies, reinvest. We have every single training record, and even in the IA reports themselves, the deputies who were part of this investigation gave statement in compliance that they understood the policies and that they had received the training to support what we already know from a record standpoint. Yeah, well, you'll be fine with it. We spent a lot of time with this production to make sure we didn't compromise the criminal investigation nor impact unnecessarily any type of emotional trauma to the families. I had a chance to speak to the family members yesterday and make sure that they were aware that we were responsible, that there was a failure here, and that everyone would be held accountable. And I will say this, on behalf of the family members, the level of resiliency that they demonstrated on the phone yesterday was remarkable. I spoke to the father of Andrew's father, Michael, who's an advocate for law enforcement, seemed to be a staunch supporter for what we do. And it was heartbreaking to be able to make that phone call to someone who supports what we do, knowing that we failed him and his family. I will also say that speaking to Mary's sister, very receptive and understanding that this was going to take some time for us to get right, but was appreciative that we were calling and willing to openly give the public what they need as well as the family members. The last thing I'll say before we start the video is a great appreciation to our city partners, from the mayor and the commissioners over the last several months of having these conversations back and forth about giving us more time, allowing us to do this the right way, and maintaining that partnership and comfort and assurance to the community. Hats off to that entire city commission. First animation illustration you see, I'm going to speed this up for you as you're trying to figure out. That black dot represents the suspect. The yellow box represents the residence in which Mary and her father was residing in. This took place about 5:40 in the morning. He arrived on a scooter, I believe it was. Understanding patterns of life, he positioned himself there for about 20 plus minutes or so hanging out. You see the timestamp still about 5:40. At 6 o'clock, David stepped out in the backyard, at which time he was murdered. Suspect enters inside the house. Mary and both of her daughter are inside the residence, was able to escape momentarily, fleeing off to the side of the home. The suspects then pursues her. At this point in time, he tases her, drags her back inside of the residence. Now keep in mind, here we are, again, it's 6 o'clock in the morning.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
First call comes in.
It's not my address, but I live at 9762 North Grand Duke Circle. There's gunshot wounds on the next street. Oh my God. Boom, 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 boom. And I heard it several more times.
How many times would you say?
I probably heard it like 4 rounds.
Okay. How many minutes ago?
Less than
That is directive coming from Sergeant Allen.
Copy 7 Bravo 4, you're gonna remain on the signal 20 Bravo 6, Bravo 7 back 3, and India 2 show you all 51 to the 33. 7 Delta 2 to show you 51 as well, sir.
So as I mentioned, they were already out in the field handling a mental health call. The sergeant gives the directive to rally in the area and left the 2 other deputies on scene.
7 India 2 back common area. Advise a common meeting location or rally point.
Yep. Trying to get the, this one. So, see if you can make landline, for me, please.
We're still landline right now. Caller is not providing any descriptions of subjects or anyone screaming, advise they no longer hear shots. Can only make out a clear male voice and crying and a child's voice. Other than that, no further.
What is that?
Copy. 7 India 2 advise the rally point.
782 at, State Road and Knob Hill Road.
Copy. Rally point for State Road 7 and Knoxville.
No, not State Road 7, State Road. State Street, I'm sorry.
Correction. State Street, Knoxville.
And I'm gonna try to use that line with the caller.
Are they lights and sirens at this point, Sheriff, on their way there?
I believe some of the units were licensed. Actually, you'll see it blow up coming by in a second. Some were lights and sirens responding to the surrounding area. But as you can see, a couple units bypassed the residency and took a staging position per the sergeant's instruction and decided to rally out there. That's not within policy. That's not within procedures. That's not what we train.
So he told them to park across the street there?
He gave orders to the training car to find a position to rally, correct.
Whereas they should have gone straight to the house?
They should have went straight to the house. As you can see, from the time that the first shots fired call came out at 6:01, dispatch deployed resources at 6:03. At this point in time, Mary is still alive. She's running from one door to the next in the community, trying to find help. She ended up identifying one residency where the door was unlocked. That was Andrew's residence, in which time suspect comes in, and at that point in time, he killed both Mary and Andrew.
Yes, my name is Green next door. I'm at
Here's an additional call coming in.
1 North Palm Bay Parkway, Tamarack, Florida 33321. And I'm hearing noise. I don't know if it's gunshots. 5901 North Palm Bay Parkway, Tamarack, Florida 33321. Okay.
It's basically the next door neighbor.
What's the address for it? I'm not sure. If I'm facing the road, it's to my right. I hear sirens too, maybe someone will recall, I'm not sure.
Do you see anybody outside shooting or anything like that?
And I haven't seen anything with my eyes, but I'm almost certain that I heard screaming and it's like a popping noise. It could have been shooting. I can't confirm though. There's still getting shots in front of right now, right?
I'm sorry, connector is a little muffled.
Still getting shots in progress, right?
From what I'm understanding, yes. Caller is advising that it's the neighbors directly behind his 1020, but he doesn't know the neighbors. Then stated he heard 2 shots, then advised it was a total of 9 shots altogether. We are now receiving a second complaint advising that a woman is screaming and possible gunshots as well.
At this point, you can see the suspect and his daughter is now walking the community up and down the street.
Well, that's not gonna go.
Pop 148.
Is he still armed at that point?
I believe he was. We are now 7 minutes into this call after the resources was dispatched First dispatch was 603.
And repeat the address just for verification.
Yes, 5900 North Palm Bay Parkway, Tamarack, Florida, 33321. There is a history of domestic violence at that address, and there is a restraining order in place.
At this point in time, what you're going to see in the upper right screen is video footage of Sergeant Allen arriving on scene, turning his lights off, at which point both the suspect and the daughter passes his vehicle. Now, while this is happening, just a point of recognition, we have a deputy K-9 officer, Deputy Kevin Forsberg, who is coming from outside of the city, who heard this call. I believe he was in Deerfield Beach, and he ran code 3 across 4 different cities to arrive on this scene, and that is him running lead or point as he passed the sergeant with an additional backup unit who recognized this isn't a staging incident. This is something where no one should be sitting around. And those 2 deputies end up being the first deputies to arrive on scene, where we're at about almost 15 minutes later.
The Deerfield guys got there first, like they got.
In essence, he got there
The
first.
original note, sir. A female and a child screaming and crying.
You can see in the screen the suspect and the daughter walking. He's not running. He's not jumping in the car.
Child maybe 4 years old. They're here at Southbound on East Grand Circle. It's not known if it's related at this time. It's finally got a lot of walking around it this time of the morning. And she has machine on.
You can hear the frustration in the K-9 officer's voice, as well as his colleague out there, not understanding why all these deputies are standing around and not pushing the contact. And he's 100% right. At this point in time, they'll put together a small contact team, finally figure out the address location, do a clearing tactic or technique, and then discover Mr. Ponzer or David in the backyard. Disciplinary actions are already in effect, and of those 21 employees, a total of 6 will be terminated to supplement the 2 other employees that have already been terminated. So that's a collective group of 8 terminations and a multitude of suspensions. I'll take your questions. Well, it'll be much easier to give you the printout sheet where you can see the different policy violations in terms of the egregious nature that was held and why we did what we did and why I'm taking certain actions. It's a very detailed list. Most employees that we assessed was either more than 1 policy violation or so, but the ones that were most egregious, I think it kind of speaks to itself when you look at the animation and the video, where we have deputies who been trained, been supplied. We've had a multitude of cases where we have been successful in this endeavor over the last 7 years, and yet they still didn't respond. There is some level of liability on the sergeant's position for some of the orders he gave, and that's why he is gone. In addition to comments that he made in his own internal affairs investigations, were indicated to us and his troops that he was absolutely a coward. Ain't another way to put it. I talk all the time in this profession. I can train you, I can supply you, I can give you all the tools to be successful. What I can't coach is courage and effort. And if you're gonna sign up for this profession, you better make sure you have both of those first, or don't join this profession. That's not just BSO, that's not just Broward County, that's every officer in this country right now. Because this stuff keeps happening. And it has nothing to do, at times, with whether or not people are prepared. In any profession, you get bad apples. You get some reporters that aren't not as good, not doing their job, and just hoping to get their check and not perform. We can't afford that in this profession. People die. We had every opportunity to save that woman's life. There wasn't much we could have done for her father. In these active shooter events, 2-pronged things take place, an ambush and stalking. You just seen both of them. The ambush resulted in David losing his life. There was nothing we could have done at that moment. But we maybe had an opportunity to stop it if the investigative procedures before this incident took place. This is why all of this sequence is so important for young officers and continuing veterans out there. You have to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's and don't become complacent with some of these calls that we may receive 20 or 30 times in our careers. It's the one time you dismiss it, you don't collect evidence, you don't do the things that are important, and you're standing up here explaining to a population of almost 2 million people that we failed them. You damn right. And we have a policy for that. It's called duty to intervene. These ranks and insignia do not determine an officer's individual ability to use sound discretion. Discretion is fundamental in this profession. We determine who goes to jail, whether the evidence is there or not. And these men and women all admitted to understanding the training protocols. Every single one of them have been documented. And there's a common sense aspect to this as well. How do you sit on a call where, and I'm going to share this. This is very problematic for me, this call. I own it. I accept it as the administrator. I'm accountable first, but I delegate responsibility to people who take an oath as well. And I've ran those routes. I went out there on a Sunday at the same time, and I ran those routes. And they could have been at that house within 2 minutes, max, running code 3. There was no traffic on those streets that night. There was nothing to obstruct their ability in a marked unit with lights and sirens and the powers and authority invested in them from this state to get there and do the damn job. So it's absolutely unacceptable. They didn't get as you saw in the video, the neighbors were waking up and making calls. They had an idea of the general area and location to arrive to. If you go to the area, right, we're Monday morning quarterbacking, but we got the evidence to do it. If you go straight to the call, you intercept this guy running down the street, or not even running, walking down the street. Even as he stalked Mary, he was walking, he wasn't running. All it takes is one of those deputies to turn around and drive into the scene, and they see an armed suspect walking down the street with a daughter and a woman screaming for her life. So there will be no acceptability coming from me as to whether or not this falls on just a sergeant. Because I can tell you as an officer who's done this job for 20 years, I have dismissed sergeants' orders at time, I have dismissed captains' orders at time when it was the right thing to do. I have been running down these streets in Broward County in shorts and rifles for 20 years. Every morning I wake up, you know what I hope for? That I have an opportunity to face some of the worst of society and put that threat down. I've never been an officer that cared about parking violations or traffic stops or arresting somebody for 2 grams of marijuana. That's not what this community is counting on. They're hoping when they dial 911 that the people that show up on scene is qualified, competent, morally and ethically sound to do the job, and they better be on time, and we weren't. There is statutory timelines that exist in there in terms of how fast and expedient we can get through all that. And again, I'm going to go back to what I've learned. I had to come in and clean up Stoneman Douglas mess. And I've seen the impact of moving too fast in these investigations or pushing too hard on an investigation. And men and women who I fired, that Scott Israel didn't fire, that I fired, was afforded an opportunity to come back in arbitration. So we are very delicate right now with this because I don't want, I don't want any one of these people we terminate to come back here over some mishap in an investigation or something that we didn't do. So that's why it took the 2,000 plus hours to get it right. Go ahead. I'm not really sure on all those little technicalities. That's up to legal, and that's why we have a legal team to cipher through all that. But what I can tell you is we did everything by the book times 10 because we knew how bad this was going to be. It's a processing element where first part is the Professional Standards Committee will provide their recommendations. Executive Director Colonel John Hell goes through with his administrative team, examine as to whether or not they want to stay within that compliance. He makes the decision as to whether or not to up or downgrade the disciplines, and then once he signs off, I look at it and either I concur or I do not, and I concur 100% with his decision. Let me do this really quick for you, Joan, but we're going to give you this printout. In short, Sergeant Allen was terminated for investigative procedures and response. Deputy Brittany King was terminated for investigative procedures. Deputy Monzon was terminated for investigative procedures. Deputy Lamar Blackwood was terminated for his response. Deputy Eric Kalask was terminated for his response. Sergeant Devon Williams was terminated for his investigative procedures. Deputy Di Cross will receive a 10-day suspension for response. And I can go on and on and on, but we're going to print this out for you. Yes, it is. Yeah, we identified some things in terms of how the case management was handled, impacting from day one going all the way through, failure to collect evidence, all these things that I think, had we taken the appropriate action, probably could have prevented it, but that's not 100%. When people make up their mind they're going to kill somebody, you're not stopping them from doing that. No, look, that's a policy violation, right? We collect evidence, and people were terminated for that. So again, what we've done and looked at is from the management component all the way down, right? Procedurally, detectives, investigators, patrol officers, we've supplied them, trained them, gave them all the tools they need to be successful. When a district captain is not aware of all these different areas and deficiencies, it starts at the top and it starts to trickle down. And that's why it was much more easier, so to speak, to terminate him on the spot being an at-will employee. And as the case developed, we start seeing more and more, which led to a termination as far as his position. But no, we will reset. We put the appropriate people out there in that district, captains and support personnel who understand what our objectives are, and we have the confidence in them that they're going to perform. But this is a lesson. Day one, I said, when this case is closed, every single deputy will take this in training, and that starts next week. And every single captain will be over in the training center, and I will lead this presentation with this collective group of administrators about the do's and don'ts and how they better pay attention to detail about what's going on in their shop, or they're going to be fired next. And I hope every deputy in this agency heard what they said and felt what they felt. Any deputy in this agency who doesn't agree with that sentiment need to retire today. If anyone in this agency, this is to my troops, anyone carrying a badge and gun who think that's acceptable, you have the ability to resign today. This has nothing to do about protecting our own. We're here to protect the community first. And so there will be no rhetoric coming from this agency as to whether or not the disciplinary actions were appropriate. They have attorneys and they have an opportunity to go to arbitration. But this dies quietly in this agency, and people better saddle up and perform to make sure that doesn't happen again. I accept accountability. I don't point the finger at anyone but me. That's the weight, that's the burden, Marissa. That's the burden. I accept every single failure, and I don't accept any credit for success. I give it back to the people that do the job. I'm here to bear the responsibility for what goes wrong. And the men and women that do the job every day, I applaud them and clap and cheer them on. So yes, this is very bothersome for me. We set this agency up for success. We set these men and women up for success. And either they were incompetent at the moment or pure cowards and allow this tragedy to happen. So we will move on. We will saddle back up. Once again, I want to thank the family members for their receptiveness and their compassion for this agency and the way they felt about law enforcement in general. I want to thank the city officials over in Tamarack, from the mayor to the commissioners, for being supportive and understanding that I was going to be accountable, I was going to be transparent, but they gave me enough time to do this the right way. So to the people of Broward County, we are in great disappointment with this, as you are, but I can assure you we're moving on and we're going to be better. Thank you.
Who goes by This Is a Public Service on YouTube.
This is a public service.
This is a public service.
We're out here today to ensure our natural rights are respected by those who swore an oath to support, protect, and defend the rights of the people. The purpose of all interactions is to peacefully promote government accountability and transparency. Please like, share, and subscribe so this message can reach as many people as possible. I implore you to peacefully seek redress to any and all of your grievances. This is a public service.